Happy New Year and welcome to the Ayn Rand Fan Club. I'm Scott Schiff along with William Swig. William, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Very excited about our guest.
Yeah, today we have a great guest, David Harriman. He's a longtime objectivist. You should know him if you've been in the movement for any period of time. He's the author of The Logical Leap, co-authored with Leonard Peikoff. David Harriman has a master's in physics and philosophy. He's taught at schools, and he's a very accomplished objectivist. We're glad to have him here. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Oh, well, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to our talk.
Great. Can you just, for people that may not know you, just give us a little bit about your background, your origin story, and how you ended up working with Leonard Peikoff on The Logical Leap?
Yeah. Well, in terms of my career, I'll just give you a quick synopsis here. After I got my graduate degree in physics, I got a job in applied physics, working in a think tank for the Air Force, basically. And I worked on navigation system of the stealth bomber and MX missile, and that was fun for a while, challenging, but after about 9 or 10 years, I just decided I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And my real interest was in philosophy of physics. I had ideas of basically how to combine Newton's ideas with Ayn Rand's ideas and come up with more guidance for scientists and how to do science and use a proper epistemology. So, so I took my career off in that direction, went to graduate school in philosophy, and, with the idea of trying to meet Dr. Peikoff and, establish some kind of relationship with him where he could be my mentor. And that actually worked out. Surprisingly enough, so I gave up a perfectly good career where I was making a lot of money to go into graduate school in philosophy where I'm making nothing. Everybody thought I was insane, of course. But, I actually, now I never made much money, but I actually hooked up with Leonard, and I think that helped me do some good work.
Great.
On the logical leap, when you're working with Leonard, do you remember like when you had your epistemological breakthrough, or how did you come up with your theory of induction?
Yeah, Leonard got interested in it. I was always interested in it, but Leonard got interested in it, and then he realized as he was trying to, think through it, that he just didn't have the information he needed to make progress. So, and he realized he needed to know something about science and the history of science. So he hired me to give him, a pretty intense year and a half course in the history of science. And that's really what got the ball rolling there. And the original idea was there would be part one, induction in physics, which, I would pretty much write. And then part two, induction in philosophy, that he would write. And then that plan, he got interested in the dim hypothesis, and he didn't really want to write the part two anymore. So the book became mine, and it was just induction in physics.
That's interesting. So I guess by the time he was writing, and then so The Logical Leap came out, what, in 2009, 2010?
Yeah,
Oh,
2010.
okay. And
So
then
you had
you,
so during that time you were teaching Leonard the history of physics and science. Was that when you kind of figured things out? Like, or did you already have your theory?
Oh, um, well, I certainly had part of it. And I had already rejected, major aspects of contemporary physics because I thought, it was, um, they had a wrong view of the concept of space. They had, it was very rationalistic. They would just, basically, they were just making up theories. And calling them theories of everything when in fact they were theories of anything. Uh, I mean, all you had to do, you could make all the observations you wanted, but all they did was tweak the theory so that it again fit the observations. And then
So what
the experimentalists would come back to them with a bunch of more observations that would surprise them, and they would just modify the theory again. So that kept going on and on.
that sounds like what they did with the Big Bang Theory. Uh,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
definitely with the Big Bang Theory.
Also,
Yeah.
can you describe like what you think about the nature of space? Because I've struggled with the nature of space, and I also agree that I don't think the theoretical physicists have it correct. It's kind of absurd and based on space-time being one or united or something. And so, like, how do you think about space?
Oh, um, well, I'm going to say something radical here. I think Aristotle understood space better than contemporary physicists do. Um, he Aristotle viewed it as a relation of places, basically a sum of places. That's it. I think that's perfect. That's exactly what it should be. Um, place Place is the first concept that you come to before you come to the concept of space. And place is just a relationship between things, right? Um, and what is space? It's just the sum of all those relationships, all the places. So what physicists have done, the consistent mistake that they've made is to reify it into something in itself. Now, Newton did that. His view on absolute space. And, he viewed space as this backdrop that things were put in. But it's like having I don't know, chalkboard. And the things you write on the chalkboard, but the chalkboard is space. Okay, so it's
So
and
do you
there were
disagree with the idea that space is a medium for matter?
yeah, I don't believe that. I think
well,
it's just the sum of places. There's matter, but um, it's that's everywhere. I mean, there's stuff everywhere, but there's 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 no thing called space holding that stuff. There's just
William will
stuff.
try to, let you develop your space knowledge of space. But David, I do just want to say in the logical leap, you talk about Kant's philosophy kind of derailing the Enlightenment approach to science, and it's just like, what? How would science be different today if there had been no Kant?
Oh, wow, that's a long story. But you can you can see the beginnings of it very easily, right after Kant. Kant had, in contrast to Ayn Rand, Kant had an immediate influence, very strong influence. And the reason is the culture was set up for him, basically, in a way that it wasn't for Rand. Kant was really, he gave a huge push to a movement that had already started, basically with the skepticism of Hume, the extreme rationalism of Leibniz. Philosophy had already gone off the track, and Kant came along, took advantage of that, and jump-started that movement, about 100 times worse. But things were already going in his direction. Now, Rand is the opposite. She was going against the current. So it takes a lot longer to be widely influential. But with Kant, the first thing you see in terms of science, in Germany, there was the Romantic movement, not having anything to do with art, but Romantic science, basically. And that, they're just outrageous irrationality. It's really, really remarkable to look at it. Anybody want to actually study this in any detail, I would direct them to my article, Enlightenment, Science, and Its Fall, because there I go into Kant's science, not just his philosophy, in some detail, and then what happened after Kant and the way he affected German science in the next generation. And there were two influences Kant had: the skeptical side of Kant and the rationalist side. The rationalist side led to all these physicists just deducing how the nature of the world had to be from philosophy, okay, which is ridiculous. Philosophy should never intrude on science in that way. The skeptical side of Kant, they took the view that, as Kant said, science is just a mathematical description of appearances. Okay, so there is no causality. We shouldn't search for causes. That led to the positivist movement. And people like Mach, if anybody is familiar with that name. Now, those people all denied the existence of atoms because we couldn't see them. So they were held down to the perceptual level. So you've got two types of scientists that come out from Kant. One is a castles in the sky rationalism, and the other one is skepticism so extreme that we can't believe anything that we aren't looking at. So there's no such thing as atoms,
But science still kind of took off in the 19th century. Science still took off in the 19th century, despite.
Oh yeah, not everybody was as strongly influenced by Kant. For example, continental Europe was definitely more influenced by Kant than England was. So some of the best science, I would say the best science in the 19th century, was done in England. The Faraday, Maxwell, England became the leader of science in the 19th century, partly because they were the least influenced by Kant.
Interesting. What's it like working with Leonard? We hear of him being a little, overbearing, especially on editorial issues. Is that
on what?
On editorial issues? Making sure every word's exactly right.
Yeah, I I've always had the mindset of um, if I'm working with somebody who knows more than me, I'm willing to just shut up and listen. And so even if the criticism is pretty harsh, um, my view is, well, I just learned something valuable from that. And and so when I first started working with Leonard and writing things that he edited, I mean, yeah, sometimes he says, this is garbage. Why are you even giving it to me? Um, but I look back on it, and it's not that he was wrong. It was garbage. Um, so, but after a couple of years of that, I got to be a much better writer. So I thank him for it. I've got nothing but gratitude. So,
I
and
think
in
he's
terms of
relayed
working,
similar sentiments with working with Ayn Rand, that
yeah,
she could be tough, but it made him better.
oh, made him much better. And in fact, well, I don't think he would mind me telling this. When he was writing the Ominous Parallels, uh, he he would submit chapters to her that she would read and comment on. Well, I guess he submitted one chapter that he thought was good, and they met to talk about it, and she basically looked at him and said, I don't even know what you're talking about here. I mean, it's like, and then she ended up convincing him that the chapter really wasn't very good. But you know, you learn if you're willing to, if you're not defensive and you're willing to take that kind of criticism from somebody who knows more than you end up being steady, making steady progress toward being a much better intellectual yourself. So I nothing but gratitude from me.
I like
It's
to
great.
go back to the physics. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I've been following this. I don't know if you're following the crisis in cosmology. That's what they're kind of calling it. It kind of comes from Eric Lerner's book,
Yeah.
um, "The Big Bang Never Happened."
Right.
Are you familiar with that? And like, what do you
Yes.
think? What do you think of that debate going on?
Um, well, first, the title is true. The Big Bang never happened. Um, the whether now some of these people are, they're putting forth an alternative to the Big Bang, the plasma cosmology, and um, now I don't know whether there's. I have an opinion. I haven't studied it enough to have an opinion on whether that is a viable alternative, and that might be true. But here's one way I look at it. You can, in this case, you can reject the Big Bang Theory without having a worked out alternative. Um, I mean, physicists shouldn't think, oh, if I reject Big Bang, I have to propose um, this
Something.
new theory that explains everything. No, um, if the currently accepted theory makes no sense at all and is terrible at explaining the actual observations, then you just reject it, even if you don't have anything to replace it with. So, in terms of plasma cosmology, I mean, maybe one of these days I'll study it enough to have an opinion on it, but I haven't done that yet. But in terms of Big Bang, um, well, first of all, it's I view it as a creation myth. It's the whole universe popped out of an infinite density mass point, 13 billion years ago. And I mean, I think they're up to 13.7 now, but I'll leave that part out. It's interesting that the theory was first proposed by a Catholic priest who was also a physicist. And initially, the physicists that were supportive of the theory and advocating it were explicitly in favor of a creation theory. So anyway, that's one thing to say about the Big Bang. The universe is eternal. It wasn't created. Existence has always been here, so forget about that.
It's interesting to me that it seems to have taken these new images of deep space to really convince a lot of people that the Big Bang Theory is hogwash, because it didn't register with them that the philosophy behind it was wrong. It took these images of galaxies or like far away that are much older than the original Big Bang Theory postulated.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of very troublesome observations for the Big Bang Theory. That's been going on for decades. A long time ago, they said, well, our theory implies that the matter distribution in the universe should basically be homogeneous, that it should be evenly spread out. Well, then back in the 80s, observational astronomers came to them and said, hey, we've found these superclusters of galaxies. So the matter distribution isn't even close to being even and homogeneous. There are these clusters, they're relatively, and there's spaces between the clusters and so on. So then, of course, then the theorists went back and modified the theory to account for that. And then they cite this microwave background radiation as major evidence for the Big Bang. Trouble is that was too uniform rather than not uniform enough. And so they had to modify the theory to explain that. Turns out the theory requires that there be a much higher mass density in the universe than is actually observed. So they had to modify the theory to try and account for that. So it's been a painful job for the theorists, because every time they settle on the theory, the observational astronomers come back to them and say, oops, we found this. And the theorists are, presented with another headache and have to change the theory again. So now you've got a situation where, let me see, not only was there a Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago, but it went at much, much faster than light speed. Inflation. That caused the uniform nature of the microwave background radiation. But there were quantum fluctuations. Those caused the superclusters of galaxies. And so they explain all this stuff by events that are completely inaccessible to us, that happened in the first thousandth of a second.
So. Yeah, it smacks of faith. You have to have faith in it, and faith. Ayn Rand described faith as the belief in something despite the evidence that it's wrong, and so yeah. I think that's what we're facing now with people who still believe in the Big Bang Theory. They just have faith in it now.
Well, and it becomes just part of the scientific culture, I guess you could say. If you're trying to convince a physicist, particularly someone in astrophysics or something, that the Big Bang Theory is wrong, well, they're going to get a bit defensive about that because they've accepted it for the last 20 years. I mean, it's been a part of the way they view the universe. And if you really did convince them that it was wrong, it would shake their whole world. So there's a reluctance to accept that you've made a mistake on that magnitude.
Yes, absolutely. I want to just switch gears. There was a little bit of controversy when it came out. There was like a mini schism. Some people had issues with it. Can you talk about that from your own perspective? And did it sour you on the movement at all?
Oh, wait, what
The,
schisms?
the logical leap when it came out, there were some people that
Oh,
were.
oh. Um, yeah, I found it peculiar that uh, the book, the book in general was very well reviewed. So most of the reviews I got were 5-star reviews. In fact, it actually received a 5-star review in Physics Today, which is a major publication. And actually, I don't know of any other objectivist book that was given a 5-star review in a major publication that had nothing to do with objectivism. But on the basis of that review, I got invited to give a talk to well over 200 professional scientists at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, probably the best science institute in the country. So in many, many ways, the book was very favorably received. The one exception to that was the Ayn Rand Institute. So they the only two significant negative reviews I got came from the Ayn Rand Institute, basically. So there was John McCaskey, and then another guy, Travis Norson, you probably haven't even heard of. But the McCaskey thing turned into, a big deal.
That's the name, yeah.
The I have to say that, well, first, I guess I should just say at the time, I was upset about it. I didn't expect the Institute to do that to me. But on the other hand, maybe if I had it to do over again, I just would have shrugged, said, yeah, no big deal. Let them go their way. I'll go mine. So maybe that would have been the right approach. But McCaskey's review was very dishonest. First of all, to write a long-winded 4-page review addressing 2 paragraphs out of a 260-page book is just weird on the face of it. I mean, you can't write a 4-page review of a 260-page book and address 2 paragraphs on the history of science and then think that you've reviewed the book. So the other thing I could say is he criticized my knowledge of the history of science, but I was giving him portions of the book while I was writing it. And he he wasn't criticizing the history. In fact, he said to me a couple of times that, wow, I wish I know the history as well as you do. So then, as soon as the book is published, he comes out with this review saying, I don't know the history of science. So, I mean, you can make what you will of that.
We do want to get into the current politics, some issues there, but before doing that, I'd like to give a pitch for your new website. You just created a new website called davidharrimand.com. Could you describe your website and tell us what it's about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because a lot of the work that I've done in the past is not really available publicly right now. And I wanted to make sure that people who were interested had a way of getting to it, and buying it. So, and, some of the articles that I put on the website, there's a page that on articles, and, some of them I'm particularly proud of. I have an article on Galileo's battle with the church, and the whole, I think that was a very pivotal event in history. It really started the age of reason, and it freed up the mind from the church. So I think Galileo is an incredible hero, and telling that story is very important that people know that. And it is very difficult to get an objective description of what happened there. And actually, in some ways, I'm surprised they haven't made a movie out of it. It was so dramatic, his fight with the church, that if there ever was material for a good movie, that's it.
I want to say there may be something in production, but be that as it may, speaking about your issues with the Ayn Rand Institute, that's a good segue for politics, because you
okay,
definitely
wait. Can I say a few more things about the website?
Absolutely, we're going to put a link. Yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, so I have a whole list of articles there, including a transcript of my Johns Hopkins APL talk, which I think is a wonderful lead-in to the logical leap, and a very, I think it's one of the best talks I've ever given. And then there's the Galileo one. There's the Enlightenment Science in its Fall. Anybody want to know what I did before I went into philosophy? I even threw in one of my professional papers in physics. So and then I've included a lot of science units that I've written. So in astronomy, in physics, in biology, and chemistry. And one thing I would say there is I would particularly recommend the astronomy, which is hardly taught in schools at all today, or at least what I include in my course is not taught. And I think very important. It's a prerequisite for understanding Newton. And I have a long unit on Newton that builds on that astronomy. So if anybody really wants to understand Newtonian physics and wants to be able to look up in the sky and recognize what they see, I really strongly recommend those two.
That's great.
Okay, now we can go on.
I'm glad, and we're going to put a link to your website. But one of the reasons we want to have you, we're kind of fellow dissidents versus the left-leaning objectivists that we're kind of more for Trump and countering the woke nonsense. And so
that's refreshing to hear.
Yeah, it was refreshing to hear you. You're a lonely voice within people in the movement. That's why some people have been calling for your shunning, I guess. But I'm curious, like, what were you always leaning right? Did you get red pilled at somewhere? I mean, for me, it was like when the IRS started investigating the Tea Party. I was just like, oh, this is ridiculous. You know, they're coming after us.
Oh
And
yeah. No, the left has been using government agencies as weapons for a long time. And it's, and Trump is trying to do something about that. So that's one of the many things I like about him. No, I mean, in terms of me being right leaning, I mean, I've always been the same in terms of my political philosophy. I'm for individual rights. I love the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. That's
sure.
the now whoever I think upholds that the best. That's who I vote for. So always been that way. Now, when I first registered, when I was, I don't know, 21 years old or whatever they allowed you to register back then, I registered libertarian because I thought, well, they're the ones that are the most for freedom. Now, later, I got critical of them.
Getting close
And
to Leonard will do that to you.
yeah, I got critical of them before I even met Leonard.
Okay, all right.
But no, there's too many like anarchists, and it's people. Okay, anybody who believes that we should just drop the military, we can be anarchists. I regard that as insanity because if we don't have police and military, we're in deep trouble.
Right, you end up with a strongman or something.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I voted for Republicans definitely way more often than Democrats because from the time I was young, who did you have running for the Democrats? You had McGovern, who in '72, who was practically a socialist. You had Jimmy Carter, who was a disaster. Then you had Mondale,
Dukakis,
who was a socialist. I mean, they just one horrible candidate after another. Now, one thing I will say is that there have been Republicans that were, I would say, pretty much equally horrible. And those are the Bushes. George W. Bush, I regard as definitely one of the worst presidents in the history of the country. So, in fact, I think I was even, I got so mad after 9/11 that I even wrote a letter calling for his, accusing him of treason. So, I mean, and I've never done that against any other president. No, I really despised him. I didn't think it could get any worse until Obama came along. So.
That's great, and that's.
Let me ask you about voting for like a third party versus picking one of the Democrats or Republicans, because in my opinion, the culture war has gotten so bad that our priority in voting should be backing a viable winner, like someone who's probably going to win or has a chance at winning, versus like a libertarian who has no chance. Like, do you think it's and it could depend on what state you're in. Like, I'm in California and my vote doesn't matter much except to register, my support for the Republican.
Right.
But do you think it's more important to vote for the best person who can win versus maybe someone who you think is more principled and is more your type of guy, but has no chance of winning?
Best person who can win. Look, when the left is so bad right now. Boys are girls and girls are boys. And advocating communism, but at the same time letting criminals out of jail that have been accused of 70 different crimes. And so deliberately increasing the violent crime in the country, weaponizing the government agencies, the seeming support for Antifa and pro-Hamas demonstrators. So you have this support for violence. Now it's even led to what has been called the assassination culture. So you've got this pretty much open support for violence, and in addition to that, the sheer insanity of saying boys are girls and girls are boys, and taking advantage of the confusion of young people, because there are people that are confused, when they're 13 years old. We have this weird phenomenon now of transgender people being violent. That actually, as far as I understand, isn't the case for real transgender people. And I mean, that should raise some questions about whether these people are really transgender or whether they're just mentally ill. So that's not my field. I don't know why I digressed into that.
No, but there's people ginning up anyone who's considered the historically marginalized, and kind of telling them, it's these white male capitalists that are stopping you from achieving your utopia.
Right. And I think the public schools are actively promoting kids thinking that, they're transgender, or because, I see way more confused kids than I used to when I was young. And, it's the latest cool thing. It didn't used to be cool, but now it is. If you're a boy and you say you're a girl, wow, that makes you really cool. So
there is a trendy factor that's
I think what you're getting at here is the evidence for why the left is so horrible. Like, the Democrats have embraced this absurd ideology of transgenderism, and this idea that a boy can be a girl, or you don't even have to transition anymore. You just say you're a girl, and voila, you're a girl, And this is absurd. And this is evidence that the mindset on the left is just beyond the pale, and the right has rejected this, and that's a good thing. And it shows that in some capacity they are clear thinking. They are not in this absurd mindset. They might think absurd things in terms of maybe religion or something, but in terms of some of the science, just the obvious science that you don't even have to have a degree in to understand,
right.
Male
versus female.
Right. Wasn't there a Democratic senator or something that was questioned? Probably not a senator. I forget who she was, but
Supreme Court nominee. What's a woman?
She was asked, well, how do you define, what a woman is? And she said, I don't have a PhD in biology, so I couldn't possibly answer that question. So this is how bad it's gotten. But let me, aside from those absurdities, I regard the crime issue as a major one. But the other one is the Green New Deal. I think for some reason that I don't fully understand, people are underestimating how important that the energy issue is, because I mean, the Green New Deal, as I understand it, was the goal of eliminating fossil fuels by like 10 years from now. Now, okay, that would literally be suicide. I mean, the
Much lower
attempt
standard of living.
there, well, I mean, literally a lot of people freezing to death in the wintertime. I mean, they won't be able to afford heat. There won't be any heat. Um, no, everything would, I mean, in the United States, this isn't true of all countries, but in the United States, the number of calories that we take in just in food every day, our standard of living actually requires 100 times more energy than that. Now, where is that going to come from? Is it going to come from windmills? Everybody knows that's not true. And even the people pushing the Green Deal, they know it's not true. And most of them, in addition to being against fossil fuels, are against nuclear power, which is the only viable alternative to fossil fuels. So they're against electrical power in general. So pretty much that means we all die. Now, that should be of some concern to people. The fact that if the Democrats were in control, you would be about 10 years away from dying.
At least needing some sort of alternative.
Yeah,
and
Trump.
There's like two different types of these environmentalists. There's the fundamental environmentalists who have the theory and they really want to get rid of fossil fuels. But then there's also just the shysters or the scam artists who are doing this to bleed the oil industries of their money. They're like trying
sell
to
carbon credits.
Yeah, they're trying to make money off of this and through, perpetuating the guilt people would have for using fossil fuels. So they feel guilty for destroying the planet. So they're gonna give money pay the tax. So it's just a way to get money out of people.
Yeah, to a large extent. And I think there's a lot of politicians making money off of it because the windmills, obviously, the companies that make those windmills they're not making any money. It's a very expensive way to produce energy. You're not going to make money by paying for this enormous plot of land and putting hundreds of windmills on it. So, they all have government subsidies. So if you're running on government subsidies, well, you've got this very close relationship with politicians, right? And if that leads to a lot of corruption. I'm sure the politicians are making a lot of money off of it. I'm sure the windmill people are making a lot of money off of it.
David, I want to gently push back on one of your more recent statements. Now, I'm a Trump supporter as well, but some people talk about him as defending he's much better than the left, lesser of two evils. And you've come out and said, he's one of the greatest presidents of history of our time. And so some people are saying, well, that was a bridge too far to actually, to say that with the things that he's doing and some of it that aren't necessarily pro-liberty or, even questions like the Venezuelan bombings or different issues. I'm sure they have a million of them.
I sure like some of the bombings. That finally taking out Iran's nuclear facilities after all these years. If you think about it, basically since 1980, no president has done anything to stop Iran. Not a single thing. In fact, Obama did everything he could to help them
Sent
get
pallets
even
of
stronger.
cash.
Right. Now, Trump comes in, and in the first 6 months, he says, no, I don't want Iran to have nuclear facilities. I don't want them to have nuclear bombs. Send in the stealth bombers, take them out. And he did. Okay, so he did what other presidents couldn't do in 40 years, he did the first 6 months. Okay. You got to give him some credit for that. Now, Iran is the major supporter of Hamas, Hezbollah. So if you take out Iran, that where is Hamas and Hezbollah? Where are they going to get their missiles? Because Iran hardly even has a missile program left. They lost probably at least 60% of their missiles in that war. So I have no idea how Hamas and Hezbollah can continue, without Iran's support. So, I mean, to say that Trump has improved things in the Middle East is an understatement. And he's done more than, he's done by far more than any president in the last 40 years. So that I give him enormous credit for. Now, in terms of energy, he's going to make the United States energy independent, and I think he's going to go further than that and make us an energy exporter. And that is going to drive down all prices, not just energy prices, because when energy is expensive, it fuels inflation on everything, because everything uses energy. So I think in that sense, that is a huge step in the right direction.
So, David, I want to ask you about the tariffs. One problem a lot of objectivists have with Trump is that he's imposed all these tariffs on different countries, and he referred to them as reciprocal or retaliatory tariffs. And I kind of like that idea, even though I think we should have embargoes against certain countries like China instead of tariffs. But I think Trump is working within the means that are available to him to try to correct some of the foreign policy problems created by past presidents. So yeah. I was wondering what you think of these tariffs and whether they're a good thing or not.
I do think they're a good thing in the current context. And the people who have argued strongly against tariffs, one of the things that I think they are underestimating is the national security issue in regard to tariffs. Trump understands we live in a very dangerous world today, and part of that is because of what past presidents have done. And we have lost a lot of our manufacturing capability. And we're in situations right now where, for instance, China makes most of our medical supplies. Okay, that's an unacceptable situation.
And they threatened them in the early days of COVID if we were blaming them for the virus.
Yeah, no, you can't have your number one enemy in the world making all your medical supplies. That's pretty much common sense. The other thing is we get most of our computer chips from other companies. A lot of them come from Taiwan. And we have an alliance with Taiwan, but I don't think that's a very safe alliance because China still regards Taiwan as part of China. So and that would certainly be one of the reasons why China would want to take over Taiwan if Taiwan's making 2/3 of our computer chips. So, we are in a very vulnerable situation without having a strong manufacturing base. And Trump clearly sees that. And that's one of the reasons for these tariffs. It's not just a way of, getting revenue. It's also a way of promoting our manufacturing base, which I agree with him. I think that's crucial to our national security. And if you look back at history, some of the anti-tariff people, I think their arguments are rationalistic and they're just floating abstractions. They don't, for instance, look back at history, why we used to be the leading manufacturer in the world. Okay, you could ask yourself, why aren't we anymore? Well, because of government interference in the economy. I mean, we drove the manufacturers out of the country. Trump's just trying to get them back. The government did that by pro-union legislation that drove the labor wages up so much that companies couldn't compete with foreign companies. If you have to pay an unskilled worker $25 an hour, you're not going to be able to afford to compete against a country that pays them $3 an hour. So
that's kind of one of the major issues, isn't it? It's the regulations that our government imposes on our economy are causing a lot of companies to look elsewhere for labor, such as places like communist China. Like how can our companies compete with a labor force that is communistic and is essentially a sort of slave labor force? You can't, if you want to be an American company hiring Americans, you have to compete with other companies that are able to hire essentially slaves, and that's not a level playing field. So I like this idea that Trump has of trying to level the playing field, although I think it's a very difficult task. He's dealing with a lot of stuff that only Congress can solve.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is one of the reasons why I think Trump is a very good president, is he's dealing with so many complex issues. And, problems that he was left with by his predecessors that earlier presidents never had to deal with. I think if you took Thomas Jefferson or James Madison and put them in the White House today, they would look around at the situation that we're in and they would say, I can't do this. This is crazy. So just having somebody that is principled and for individual rights doesn't mean that they're capable of dealing with this
onslaught.
Yeah, with this crazy situation we're in today. And Trump came up in business, and New York real estate, dealing with gangs and crooked bureaucrats all the time. So he's very well trained in that area. Now,
that makes sense that part of what makes him better is the threat level that exists today and the momentum against what America should be.
Yeah, I don't. Does he cut some corners in order to get the job done? Yeah, but I think the job is such that maybe that's necessary. But even in regard to an issue like free speech, some people out there are saying, "Oh, he's just a fascist that wants to be a dictator." Well, in what sense? Obama was much more of a power luster, obviously, than Trump is. Trump is cutting regulations. He's freeing up the energy industry, rather than enslaving it. So he's trying to cut back on violent crime. He's doing all these things, eliminating foreign threats. Okay, is that a dictator, or is that somebody just, taking care of problems? And in regard to, Obama was much more of a power luster, and yet you never saw these people that call Trump a fascist, who wants to be a dictator. They never said that about Obama.
Well, I think it's just as absurd as the transgender issue. If you think that Trump is a dictator, you're just wacky. You're absurd. You're absurd, because you just have to look at what he goes through. He can hardly get his executive orders passed, or he's not a dictator. The lawyers, the judges are all against him and stop him or prevent him from doing things.
Media.
Yeah, if he were a dictator, everybody would be in line, and he'd have total control over Congress and judges, and everything would get passed. The wall would be, Venezuela would be toast. There would be no problems stopping him, and he would be on a world conquest, like Hitler or something. He's not a Hitler. He's not even a dictator in like a soft sense, like a benevolent dictator. He's a U.S. president. He was voted. He was elected twice, and in 3 years he's going to leave. So I don't know what these people are.
Yeah, I know.
It's just absurd.
And some of the things that they say are overreaches of Trump's. When there were pro-Hamas riots at Harvard and Columbia, and Trump said, "Well, if you don't stop that kind of thing, I'm going to withdraw your federal funding." Now, notice what he didn't say was, "I'm going to send in the National Guard and remove some of these crazy professors you have." Okay, he never said anything like that. He said, "Look, right now we're giving you, whatever it is, $100 million a year or something. We're just going to stop doing that." Okay. You could make a really good argument we shouldn't be doing that anyway. But
at least tie it to decent behavior.
At least tie it to some kind of sanity, and not have open violence on the campus that is encouraged by the professors. So people said, "Well, he's violating, intellectual freedom." Demanding as a precondition of receiving federal funds that you don't openly advocate and allow violence on the campus, that is not violating intellectual freedom. That, if anything, is doing the opposite. It's saying students should be able to say that they don't like Hamas without being attacked. So, yeah,
that's great.
Well,
I just, with our time remaining, I do want to just switch gears a little bit. You were at Leonard Peikoff's 92nd birthday party recently, and you were very prominent in the pictures, the one with Yaron Brook shaking hands with him after not talking for a while. So, you're obviously still talking to him and somewhat close to him. Any anecdotes you can share, or from any of that?
Well, just that, we have been talking, not just at the birthday party, but, we occasionally have phone calls, and, we still talk about our personal lives, current events, whatever. And, he's still Leonard. Uh, he still has his own, definite points of view on issues, so that he can back up with argument. So I and I'm glad I still have that kind of relationship with him.
That's
So
great. Do you have any theory on why most of the ARI side, besides you and Leonard, seem to not see the left as big of a threat? Just speculate.
well, I think I don't know. The explanation might be different for different people at ARI. I'm not sure what Jerome Brooks' motive is. I don't think it's ignorance, put it that way. And I'm not sure that he doesn't know where the left is going. But there are people at ARI that I think they're basically academics. And, 96%, something like that, of academics back the left and hate Trump. So they've bought into, that whole thing. Now they claim that, well, they don't like either side. But the fact is that if you look at their website, their podcasts, their articles, Obama never got the kind of vehement criticism that they give to Trump.
You can tell who they're saving their venom for.
Oh yeah, no, they hate Trump, 10 times more than they ever, objected to Obama. That's obvious. All you have to do is, listen and read to their stuff. So, what is the reason for that? I don't know. They're big on this open border issue. Now,
a lot of immigrants in the institution.
Yeah, the doesn't seem to bother them that over 1 million illegal immigrants were coming across the border every year, and part of the reason the Democrats wanted that is to get more votes. That's no, I don't think that's any secret.
That came up in his debate with Jerome in 2013. In Leonard's debate with Jerome about immigration, that yes, it's this cynical plan for the left to continue having voter bases that won't question them.
Right. So I definitely think that's true. But they're very rationalistic. It's the same thing as their approach to tariffs. Their approach to open borders is, it's a matter of just they deduce it from the principle of individual rights,
but no context, right?
Exactly. No context, no facts regarding what effect that's going to have on the country. It's and even historically, good presidents, pro-capitalist presidents in the history of the United States have not taken that position of, anybody can come into the country unvetted. I mean, if 1 million are coming into the country every year, you can't possibly vet them. You just have to let everybody in. So you don't know whether they're prisoners, gang members, drug pushers, child sex traffickers, and some of them are all those things. But you're just not even trying to figure out. You're just opening the doors and letting them in. And I think that policy is insane. And if you go back even, 100 years to Calvin Coolidge, who was known as being a staunch supporter of capitalism. He came out and said, that's ridiculous. We're never going to do that. You don't open your borders that way because you lose your country, if you do that. And it makes cultural changes. That's what we're seeing in Europe right now. Sweden is over 30% Muslim now. 20 years ago, they barely had any Muslims. And a number of the other countries are close to 20%. And it's completely changing their demographic, their culture. Paris will not be the same place if, it's controlled by Muslims. So.
More so. Well, that's great. Well, did you have a final question or thought?
Yeah, it was, one thing that you said on Facebook was that you were interested in people who talk about the gossip or the drama between Leonard Peikoff and Kira Peikoff. So
yeah,
I was wondering, regarding that controversy, I think it's important because it does involve, copyrights to Ayn Rand's novels. It involves issues within the objectivist movement because it reflects on the movement itself and how we get along with each other, and especially with Leonard Peikoff being, one of the top philosophers in the movement. It reflects on his legacy. So that's kind of why we're interested in it and why we've done a few episodes on the controversy. But I was wondering, what is your take on this whole drama? And, do you think we should be involved and get interested in it?
I don't see that anybody who doesn't know the Dr. Peikoff, Kira, and what has been going on between, doesn't know them on a personal level should really be getting involved. Because you don't have enough information to even have an opinion. Now, I have enough information to know that Leonard knows what he's doing. This business about him being, so far into dementia or something that he can't make responsible decisions. I know that's not true because I have hour-long conversations with him. I just had one 2 days ago. So now, he has a right. My view is he has a right to do what he wants with the money that he's made. And that's pretty much all I have to say. He's of sound mind. He can do what he wants. He's already given a lot of money and support to his daughter over the years. It's not like she's been, cut out entirely. So I'm disappointed that this whole thing happened and that in his later years he has to deal with this. But yeah, I wish he had just been left alone. Put it that way. That's my view of it.
That's a fair statement. Well, we want to thank you again so much for taking the time to talk to us. Again, your website is David Harriman with the letter D at the end.com. And we'll put that up on the website and encourage people to go over there. And that's what you've got going now. You're just kind of promoting the website and going from there.
Yeah, right now, and I'm doing some tutoring on the side. Now, I should mention that also on my website, I do offer to do, lectures and tutoring and seminars or so on objectivism and, even history of science, so on. So some of the topics that I have expertise at, and the logical leap, if any group of people want to go through that book in detail, I'm available for that. So, people can get in touch with me. I've got contact information there.
That's great. We'll try to send people over there. Great. Well, again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so we'll have this posted later today. Again, I'm Scott Schiff along with William Swig. Thank you to David Harriman for joining us. This is the Ayn Rand Fan Club, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.